Hello, my name is Dr. James Santa, the Director of International Academics of the Common Mission Project, and I'm pleased to bring you Concept 2. Concept 2 is going to cover the right side of the mission model canvas, what we like to call desirability. If you remember from the previous concept session, there are three key areas in the mission model canvas. The first being desirability, which is the right-hand side. You have feasibility on the left, and then the bottom two boxes are viability. So for the focus of this particular presentation, we're going to be looking at desirability. And this is perhaps the most important piece of the mission model canvas. And it's one that has to get done correctly before you can really move on to the future parts or the other parts of the mission model canvas. We're going to go ahead and we're going to dive right into this section. So again, as I mentioned, this is the right side of the canvas and desirabilities. We're looking at beneficiaries on the right, those key individuals at the heart of your problem. Then you move into value propositions there on the left-hand side of desirability. And then in the middle there, bookended by beneficiaries and value propositions are buy-in and support and deployment. Well, perhaps the first question you may have is, well, what is desirability? I'm glad you asked. So there's going to be a few of these definition slides in this particular concept, and any concept dealing with the concept area dealing with these specific parts of the Lean Launchpad methodology. But it's important to have a fundamental understanding of what these mean. So I'm going to go ahead and read this for you. Hopefully you'll have this definition in your head as you're continuing to work through your mission model canvas and your H4 experience. So in the context of the H4 methodology, desirability is a way of describing how mission-driven entrepreneurs create value and find product mission fit by making products or services beneficiaries want. Desirability encompasses the analysis of the underlying reasons why a particular problem remains unsolved, as well as the identification of key mechanisms needed in order to deploy a solution. This section tests whether the innovation project is solving the correct problem for the correct beneficiaries. In the mission model canvas, it is also found at the right side of the section of the canvas that includes value proposition and beneficiary boxes that together identify the product mission fit, as well as the buy-in and support and deployment boxes. So again, what we're really noticing here, or what I hope you're noticing with this particular section, is really seeing that map between what the problem really is, the beneficiaries, again, those individuals that are at the heart of this problem, and what the particular value propositions are for each of them. So there's a video that goes along with this particular section. So when you take a look at the slides, please feel free to jump in and look at this example video. The link is provided as part of the notes to this slide. But the mission model canvas, again, is at the heart of everything that we're doing here. You have to update it frequently, if the least case weekly, but more frequently depending on the type of beneficiary discovery that you're doing. And this particular section this particular example, I should say, really dives into how the mission model canvas was particularly useful for this group that came out of Stanford University. So as we've mentioned already about the mission model canvas, the value that it's adding to everything that you're doing here is it's the way for you to frame your hypotheses. So again, here's some definitional boxes that you're going to have as you're going through, just like in concept one, where I encourage you to have copies of this ready for you to reference. This is another reference piece of material for you for your mission model canvas. Remember that they're all guesses at first. So there's nothing here that's necessarily that you're going to know day one. It's very unlikely that you're going to have a really great and firm understanding of exactly who your beneficiaries are when you start, or what your value propositions are for any of those individuals. These are all guesses. They're educated guesses based on more than likely the problem that you've been working on as part of your team. But remember, they're all educated guesses at first, and it's okay that you don't know the answers. Early on in the process, no one's going to know. Again, kind of another preview or review, I should say, of the mission model canvas, this three-legged stool approach. So remember that desirability, it tests whether innovation project is solving the right problem. Feasibility tests whether the innovation project is possible in a given time frame. Remember, we're looking at 1 to 2 years at most for the deployment of a particular solution. And then viability there at the end is a test value for the long-term sustainability. So what you're looking for is, if you can envision where all three of those circles intersect, that little small area is where we're looking for your solution and your problem area, the domain, to be defined within those areas. If you only hit 2, you're not going to have a solution that's going to be deployable and sustainable over the long term. Again, another visual reference here to the three-legged stool. And then now into a definition of beneficiaries. So Again, there's a couple of eye charts in here, and I know that I encourage in terms of telling the story not to use charts like this with any level of frequency, but from a definitional perspective, it's really, really important that you understand what a beneficiary really is. Because if you don't get this piece right, you're not going to get anything else right with the rest of your mission model canvas. You've got to nail down beneficiaries. So here's the definition. In a mission-driven model, beneficiaries are defined as the individual, group, or community that directly benefits from the products, services, or interventions provided by a mission-driven organization or government entity. Beneficiaries are the primary recipient of the value generated by organizations' offerings, and their needs, pain points, preferences, and well-being are central to the design and implementation of solutions. Beneficiaries are identified in the right-hand side of the canvas within the desirability section. By mapping out the relationships between beneficiaries, their needs, and value proposition, organizations can better assess their product mission fit. The beneficiary development process of pairing beneficiaries with specific value propositions enables, in an experimental way, allows mission-driven organizations to continually refine their offerings and maximize their positive impact on those target beneficiaries. How do you know who a beneficiary is? And the easiest way for me to explain this is, if you get this right, who's going to give you the biggest hug? And that's the individual that you're looking for at the heart of all of this. It doesn't mean that your discovery is going to talk to people that aren't beneficiaries. It actually means that you're going to talk with subject matter experts, leaders in industry, leaders in research within academia, individuals within the government or the military or the nonprofit that's sponsoring this work. You're really going to have to get a broad understanding of this problem domain early on and relatively quickly. That doesn't mean that everyone you talk to is a beneficiary. Some of these individuals just might be a really great interview and really inform the domain. But remember, you're looking for that person who, if you get this right, is going to give you that biggest hug. Well, how do you do this? And there is a formula in some ways of being able to start with all of this. So let's pay attention to that triangle on the right-hand side of your screen. When you start with beneficiary discovery, it's more than likely that you're just not really going to know where to start beyond just the organization that provided this problem to you. Or that perhaps in this case, maybe that you framed the problem around a particular industry or organization. So you're going to start there. But remember, an organization is not a thing in the same way that a person is. So you can't just call the army. There's going to be somebody that you talk to. You can't just call a carbon recapture firm. Who are you speaking with as an organization? You don't know that yet, but you're going to start at the bottom of this pyramid, the names of organizations. There's no specificity here beyond that organization. And then what your goal is going to do is, based on kind of coming up with all these different organizations that you need to be speaking with, is now you're actually going to find the people. So you're going to go from, think about it from like an accordion. You're kind of stretching it out. We're looking for this broad group of individuals. We don't know them yet. We don't know their value propositions. We don't know their pains yet. But we're going to start with these organizations based on the information we have to us. Then we're going to move into specificity with those individuals. And then you're going to do an understanding the day in the life. And this is where you're going to be getting out of the classroom and doing your discovery work. You're going to spend time learning about the particular pains and the gains that these individuals would like to see based on the tasks that they're trying to do. This is informing the problem domain. And once you do that with a number of individuals that are within the similar to same job role or job description, is now you've developed an archetype. So you've taken that accordion, you've stretched it out to having a lot of different individuals, companies. You've kind of gone into specificity with individuals. And now that you've got some saturation points with those individuals, you're opening that accordion back up, and now you've got the archetype. So you can, if you talk to one individual, say a software engineer, you can draw conclusions on that one person. If you talk to 5 software engineers, now you're starting to develop an archetype. But when you've talked to 15, 20, 30 software engineers, now you've developed an archetype. And this is what's important, is you can actually draw generalizations, not from a statistical perspective, but you can draw generalizations on that group of individuals based on all of your discovery work. So this is one of the ways that we kind of think about the framing of a problem domain initially. Because remember, we're not going into solutioneering. We're not saying that we know the problem, therefore we know the solution. No. It's not the case. And most times you're just not going to know the problem domain to even start with going to that minimum viable product route or prototyping route or solutioneering. So it's in your best interest to just take a step back and say, okay, what's going on here? So you don't have to examine the problem from your point of view. You have to quickly understand who the sponsor is, what their problem is, and be able to figure out, okay, well, what's really going on here from their perspective. Remember, problem sponsor and the problem's definition is not indisputable. It's not static. It's going to change frequently. And I would say, based on my experience, most of the time, the problem that you start with in this program is not the one that you solve. And that's an important piece here. So you're going to continually evolve what that problem statement looks like through the course of your beneficiary discovery. Then you're going to move over to this thing that we call the innovation paradigm. And that really means, are we going to solve this problem at speed, deploy it at speed, or are we just going to do another demo? We're not going to do another demo here because you're probably not going to build something. So what we're really trying to do is get to the heart of what the problem is and what is the minimal solution that would answer the majority of those pain points that the beneficiaries have. Remember that tech can just be one piece of this, but it's not the be-all, end-all. And tech may enable a value proposition. But remember that even if you're given a technology problem, it doesn't necessarily mean that the problem is technology. So this is where your discovery is going to come in very, very important to you, because you're going to really understand what is that problem that we're trying to solve for. It's a technology problem. It could be a policy or adoption issue. The only way you're going to figure that out is through your discovery. So we're going to move in the value proposition, another definition chart. But this is along with, for say beneficiaries is number one, maybe it's 1A. Most important thing here looking at from the right side of the canvas is value proposition. We'll call it 1B. So a value proposition is a strategic and persuasive statement that conveys the distinct benefits and advantages of a product or service to its target audience. It communicates the specific value that the offering brings to its customers or beneficiaries, addressing their needs, pain points, or desires. By articulating the unique combination of features, functionality, and outcomes provided, a value proposition serves as a foundation for an organization's understanding of how it creates and delivers value. This clarity is essential for startups and mission-driven organizations that develop effective business models and strategies for growth and impact. So remember what you're looking here, and the suggestion that I would give to all of you, especially early on as developing, is map those value propositions one-to-one to your beneficiaries. And I'm going to show you a strategy that I use in my H4 classrooms to do this. But remember, you have to articulate that value for each of those beneficiaries. This is one way of being able to articulate value, and this is just a visual diagram that comes from Arizona State University. And it's a great way of telling a story about value and about the work that's going on at any given time within organizations that are collaborating. So what you see here is this is circular. So there's never a done point here if you notice that. You're just getting feedback. You're defining and iterating on that problem. You're taking that information, putting it into place with having industry leaders, academia, government, soldiers, students, all those different individuals in a room to really think deeply about the problem, and then take out whatever they've learned, put it into the field to learn about what's going on with that, your hypothesis, your testing, building out the minimum viable product. You're taking all the information back, and then you're starting over again. It's never done. And this is one way, a visual like this, of telling that story that is constantly iterating. This is a buy-in and support stakeholder map, if we want to call it this. And you'll notice that at the bottom of the screen there, you'll see that the 3 parts of the mission model canvas are defined here based on different types of users. So desirability, those at the heart of the problem and ultimately a solution, are there in the middle, your beneficiaries and users. That is your desirability. Then you move over to the left-hand side, and those are their feasibility part, the people who understand what it's going to take in order to actually deploy a solution. And then the right side are those viability individuals. Those individuals are going to be helping and getting this into place. The one individual here that doesn't have a definition necessarily, but one that you have to find early on, is a saboteur. In the context of H4, your saboteur is really going to be the individual that is going to be threatened by the progress on your work. And it might not necessarily be a negative thing, but think about if you ever take away somebody's authority, their power, their capital, their resources, these are individuals that are threatened by the work here. Even if the work, the endpoint, is going to be something that's desirable and positive for the aggregate, for the whole. Find out who your saboteurs are. See if you can make them at the very least indifferent to the work that you're doing, but not negatively so that they're trying to ruin the work. But see if you can turn them into somebody who's like a key partner or a beneficiary, depending on how it is that you frame everything that you're doing. One way of being able to figure out, well, how do I find these individuals I need, is coming through an org chart. So this one is coming from a Hacking for Defense course, but this is from the Department of Defense. And you'll just notice that there's lots of organizations and different types of individuals and different individual organizations that make up the Department of Defense. Most businesses or large organizations are going to be similar to this, where they're going to have lots of different functional areas. Well, so from the discovery perspective for beneficiaries is figuring out, where do you exist within your ecosystem within an organization? That's one thing. Figuring out how much influence do I need to find above me or below me in order for a solution to get put in place. And also, Are there any glaring black holes of individuals that I haven't spoken to within this organization because I haven't understood their organization well enough? An org chart's an excellent tool. Would absolutely suggest that you have one of these. You can find it. Usually your sponsoring organization can provide you one. Or if you're working with government partners, oftentimes they're available for free online with just an easy keyword search. So your next box that we have here in the middle for desirability is in between beneficiaries and value propositions, and that's buy-in and support. And buy-in and support in the mission model canvas is the process of capturing the collective approval, commitment, and ongoing assistance from stakeholders, regulatory entities, decision makers, and other members of an organization for proposed intervention, product, or service, ensuring its successful development, deployment, and long-term sustainability. And this is why I brought up that idea of having an org chart in the previous slide. You can find these individuals or find out where you need to find these individuals by looking at these organization charts. So in contrast to for-profit startups, mission-driven organizations typically engage with a distinct set of stakeholders and decision makers rather than conventional customers. Consequently, the mission model canvas employs the term buy-in and support instead of customer relationships found in the business model canvas. This change better emphasizes the significance of obtaining stakeholder commitment and continuous support, which is crucial for the successful development, implementation, and sustainability of the innovative ideas, products, or services by mission-driven organizations. So with buy-in and support comes these types of individuals. And we touched on saboteur a little bit previously, but let's talk about supporters. Supporter is somebody who is just, they're happy with the work you're doing. They're going to give you that thumbs up. You want to know who those people are. Can you turn them into advocates? Somebody who will talk about all the work that you're doing on your behalf without being prompted. Somebody who's sitting in with somebody that they know has the influence to help make positive change. They say, you know what? These student teams are doing incredible work. Here's some of the research they've been doing. Would love to be able to connect you with them so they can learn from your experiences. Try to find or create those individuals along the way. And the last box here, from a definitional perspective, is deployment. Now, this is one of those definitions that is probably the least opaque in terms of understanding. So in the context here for mission-driven organizations, deployment refers to the process of implementing and executing the organization's strategies, products, or services, or interventions to achieve its mission and deliver its value proposition to beneficiaries. Deployment encompasses the practical steps and actions taken to bring the organization's offerings to its target audience, ensuring that the desired impact is effectively realized in the communities or beneficiaries they serve. And what I would recommend from a deployment perspective, just in practice, is think about this a little bit small at first. So if you're working with the Department of State, for example, don't say you're going to deploy your solution at scale to the entire Department of State at once. So let's just say you're working with an embassy in France, and that's your sponsoring organization. Do a beta deployment to that embassy. Learn from that experience and being able to and recommend the iteration of those solutions based on the learned experience from that beta deployment. Something as simple as that is going to help you better understand the culture of adoption of whatever the solution, policy, innovation looks like, what you're going to learn from it, that you're going to learn from it, and that you're going to deploy updates and improvements on your framework as you learn more. So couple of things that you want to be asking yourself as you're going through it are right here on the screen. But have you talked to everyone you needed to? Guarantee the answer is no. So get out of the building and talk to more people. Can you define your advocates and your supporters? If you can't do that, more discovery, more work's needed. If you don't know who your saboteurs are, to borrow something that somebody told me many years ago, if you don't know who your saboteurs are early on, you're dead. And that is truth because those individuals may be actively trying to sabotage all the incredible work that you're doing. Are you articulating an emotional story? And do you know what standards you need to support? It's not enough to just say we've got a great idea. That's wonderful on the surface, but do you know all the things that exist underneath it that would maybe prohibit or encourage a solution from going forward? So a couple of things here that you'll notice about solution deployment are these are things that you might want to ask your sponsoring organization. What is their culture like? What kind of technical maturity have, which we'll talk a little bit about later. Where are they from a program stage? Are they in early adoption? Are they in sustainment? These are things that you need to know. From a sponsoring organization activity, do you know what their contract actions look like? Do they have demos that they want to be supported in some way? Who manages their testing, evaluation, integration? All things you should have awareness of. And then lastly, on the right-hand side there, you see business operations. You have to understand what's a requirement versus what's a gap in capability. You have to know what their risk tolerance is. Are they an organization that likes to take incremental risk, and in doing so, their innovation adoption is a little bit slower? Or are they an organization that really likes to take risks and has a framework in place to support innovation, saying that we're going to try 10 things out, we're going to learn from each of them and see what sticks? And then what kind of contract constraints are in place? And this is especially relevant if you're working with a government organization that has specific scope, has ceiling, has the type of funding that is going to be either prohibitive or helpful to the type of work that you're trying to do. Things to know. Now, that being said, I would not necessarily advocate that just because some of these things aren't in place appropriately for your solution means you should stop. We don't want bureaucracy to be the place where innovation goes to die. It's simply knowing that you're going to have to find additional support or different types of intervention to support your solution going forward. Here are some key questions that I would suggest that you ask to your sponsor within your first couple of meetings. That's it. So please take this slide, use it as a reference for the questions you should ask early on to your sponsor. Another one that you want to kind of figure out from your sponsor is the technical maturity. And this is what I referenced previously about knowing where they are. If you're working with an organization that's very adept with technology, for example, or very adept at data management or policy, whatever it is, you can take maturity here. And the first word, technical, can be almost anything else, and knowing where they exist in current state. What you don't want to do necessarily is saying a very basic organization with technology is coming in with a paradigm shift that requires a whole different level of skill sets and individuals and technology frameworks in order to support. That can be a barrier that's too high for them to jump. So it's just helpful to have an understanding of where they exist within this ecosystem. And then value proposition. We've already talked about. We're going to dump into our final desirability example. And the one thing that I really want you to pull away from this particular slide, this is a final example, so this is several weeks worth of work, but notice the color coding. And this is a really great tool that I encourage my students to use in their mission model canvas work, because it makes sure that they are identifying gaps. And it also shows that the one-to-one, oftentimes, relationship between beneficiaries and value propositions have been mapped. So in this case, we'll use the first color there, that blue color. If they've got a blue beneficiary, but they don't have a blue value proposition, that's a gap. Same thing with any of the other colors there. What this allows you to do is allows you to map one for one, or sometimes one to many, from value propositions to beneficiaries and vice versa. But it's an excellent tool to say, where are we delivering value and are we missing anything? Or is a piece of that value proposition equally applicable to multiple different beneficiaries? This is a great tool for you to do that. And throughout all of our discussions on Mission Model Canvas, we'll come back to this team's example. So that is the end of concept number 2, desirability. Please keep all this information as references, the questions that I suggested, knowing what the definitions are. All of these will help you greatly as you continue your beneficiary discovery and getting out of the building. We'll see you on concept 3.